Sample roasting is one of the most exciting and also most important tasks in the coffee industry, but it's also challenging, and that's why we're going to have a close look on how I do sample roasting on the ROEST L100 Plus. I'm Ingo from ROEST Travels, and in our channel it's all about coffee roasting. In sample roasting there are some different tasks that I want to take. One of the main tasks is to evaluate green coffee beans, to decide which bean I want to take to my assortment, so find out the quality of the bean, the taste profile, if it suits me or if it suits my customers. Then the second one is the quality control. If I already have a bean in the assortment, to check if it's still good or if it aged in the meantime. And then another topic, and this is more profile roasting, is to get information out of the bean for the production roast so that I find nice profiles which I can then translate to the large production roaster. But in this video we will really more focus on the green coffee part, so the sample roasting to take a decision which beans fits to my assortment. And this has some challenges because usually I just get 100-gram samples from the producers or coffee traders, and I have just one chance to roast these samples to a point where I can then take a considerate decision, so where I know enough about the bean and have the possibility then to find out what's in it, what I can take out of the bean, and if it suits my assortment. But even more so, often when I'm taking a decision for a bean, I have various samples. They can be from different producers, they can have different processings, they can even be from different origins. So I have to roast these samples in a way that I can then really compare them, that it's really fair to evaluate them side by side, so that I can then decide which bean is the one that I want to take to my assortment. So I need to control the roast, I need to have consistency in the roast, and something that's not relevant for everybody, but especially if you're roasting a lot of samples, if sample roasting is a big task in your roastery, or if you're a coffee trader, then you need to be productive in the sample roasting. So have a machine which allows you to take work from your shoulders so that you can do other things in the meantime. And the ROEST L100 Plus is a perfect roasting machine for this task because it's super precise, it can be controlled really nicely, it's super consistent, and it's also one of the most productive machines in the market. But I'm going to show you then later the workflow, how I'm going to work with this machine. Before that, I want to talk about roasting profiles or roasting styles. How do I roast typically a sample? And this is usually really a light roasting profile. So the beans must not be green anymore, so I don't want to have any green taste in it, but I also for sure don't want to have any roasting flavors in it, because I really want to taste the terroir, the potential of the beans, the flavor notes. So I need to have the most clarity possible in the roast that I get out of these beans. And what I usually then target on the ROEST is a development time ratio. So this is the time from first crack to the end of the roast divided by the whole time of the roast. So a development time ratio of between 8 and 10%. I often go in the direction of 10%, where it then already has a little bit of texture in the roast. If you go lighter to, for example, 8%, then you have more clarity. So, but this range is actually a nice range to develop the bean to a point where you get really nice information out of it. Of course, then maybe you are looking for beans that you are going to roast darker when you do the production roasts. So in that case, you just need to do some translation, but especially if you have done some sample roasting, or if you have bought some beans, if you have a little bit of experience in coffee roasting, then you quite well know how a bean would taste if it's a little bit darker. And as said at the beginning, when you have then decided for a bean, you have larger amounts in your roastery, you can then take this bean and on this machine then also work on the profile so that you then get the best profile for your production roast. But let's go back to the sample roasting for evaluating green coffee beans. When I do this sample roast, I usually take the inlet temperature probe on the ROEST. As you probably know, this machine is packed with sensors and you have a lot of different choices that you can take. I like to take the inlet sensor for sample roasts, and this is because this sensor is then taking out all the different aspects or influences from the environment. So it gives you then consistency in how much energy you put in the system, how much energy you are giving your beans. For that, it's also important that your beans have always the same amount so that you're not different in the amount of beans you're putting in, and that the beans are also about of the same temperature than when you're putting them into the system, so that you have the most consistency possible in your sample roasting. And what's also important when you develop a sample roasting profile is that you have a profile that keeps the drum temperature in the roast at the maximum of 170 degrees Celsius, because if it's higher, then you start to get some scorching, then you start to get some roasty notes, which can be okay if you want to roast an espresso. But for sample roasting, I want to avoid that. And that's why I go to a maximum of 170 degrees Celsius on the drum temperature side. And now I'm going to show you the profile with which I'm usually working when I do sample roasting. I tested a lot of profiles out there, and at the end, the one that I usually work with is one that has been inspired by Scott Rao. You also find in the link below a video where Scott then explains in detail how he does his sample roasting. But now let's head over to the computer and have a look at the profile. This is the roasting profile I'm working with on the ROEST sample roaster, and indeed I just use one sample roasting profile for all kind of beans with the ROEST. I don't adapt it dependent on the processing or the origin of the coffee. Of course, in a perfect world, you would do that, but then you are lacking on the comparability between the roasts, and also with the small amount of green beans that you get, you then have a risk that you're screwing up a roast, and that's why I really take one profile that is working well for nearly all beans, and only if I have really particular beans like Monsoon Malabar or Mocha beans, which are then really out of the region, then you might adapt the profile, but for most of the bean, this is really perfectly working. So this is the roasting profile that I'm using for sample roasts. If you have seen the webinar with Scott Rao on the ROEST YouTube channel, then this might look familiar to you because it is a profile that he has developed. I tested a lot of sample roast profiles, and this is one that I really prefer and like. It's working well with nearly all beans. So the way it's being set up is it's an inlet temperature profile. It uses a preheat temperature of 180 degrees Celsius, and then it has only 3 points set on the inlet temperature curve. One is at 200 degrees Celsius, the top is at 330 degrees Celsius, and then it goes down to 300 degrees Celsius, and this makes it to a shape where the temperature increase at the beginning is a bit higher, and then it slows down, so the total roast will end at around 7 minutes, and like that you have quite a classic temperature curve in coffee roasting. Then the fan is set at 100%, and this makes sure that you can use a little bit less heat application, and therefore make sure that the drum is not getting too hot. The rotations per minute are set at 65 in my case, and then I take a development time ratio of 10% as an endpoint. You can go a little bit lower to 8% if you want to have more clarity. With this 10%, you already have a little bit of texture, so this is then actually your choice or your preferred style. Scott Rao is using a between the batch protocol between his batches in order to make sure that the drum never exceeds this 170 degrees Celsius. I think actually you can do that, but I have seen in my experience that it anyway hardly ever happens, and therefore I just make life a bit easier and don't work with the between the batch curve. I just work with this profile here, but then wait about 2 minutes between each roast in order to bring the system down to a temperature where I have consistency then from roast to roast. And a question that is, of course, often asked is if you want to adapt a roasting profile to the different styles of beans. And in my experience and recommendation with the ROEST, I really take one curve. So like this curve, I have a quite good roast that is working with nearly all the beans, and then I have a comparability between the roasts. So this is the profile I'm working with, and now I'm going to show you step by step how I do a sample roasting sequence if I have a lot of samples to be roasted. So the machine is now heated up. I have chosen my sample roast profile. I deactivated the between the batch protocol for this workflow. So I'm really then working from profile to profile, which I'm going to show you right in a minute. It's now heated up at around 180 degrees preheat temperature, and the drum is around 120 degrees Celsius. I have now my first sample of 100 gram green coffee beans, which I'm going to charge now in the machine. You can see that the inlet temperature curve is really on the profile curve. The drum temperature is still at around 164 degrees Celsius, so it's still in the region that I like. And now the cracks have started and we are getting into the development phase. You can see down here that we are now at around 4%, 5% development time. And when we will reach around 10%, then the machine will stop the roast. So the machine has now finished the roast at 10% development time ratio. It has then already went into charge mode again. Since I don't have a between the batch protocol profile in it, so it directly went into charge mode, but I still wait for about 2 minutes in order to get the system then cooled a bit down and get it back to the settings that I want to have to start a roast. So I wait for about 2 minutes and then I can actually put in the next roast and then go on roasting with this machine. And you have seen that the first roast took around 7 minutes. If I'm waiting now for about 2 minutes to let it cool down, then I have in total 9 minutes for a sequence. So like that, I can roast up to 6 samples in an hour, which makes it really productive on this system. So after about 2 minutes, all the settings have been stabilized. The machine is now ready for the next roast. I have already put in the next batch of green coffee beans. And while this one is still cooling, I can then already directly go in the next batch and start the next roast. And meantime, actually, these beans are cool as well, so I can take them out. And then I'm ready for the next sequence, and like that I can go on and on and on with this machine and do several roasts, one after each other. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you want to know more about the ROEST Sample Roaster, then head over to our website roesttravels.com. You find the link here. We usually have the machine in stock, so we ship them then quickly all over Europe. And if you have any particular question on the machine or on sample roasting in general, then always come back to me. You find also my contact on our website roesttravels.com.